Um, anyway, welcome. You are at Sequential Artist Workshop for Comics Karma. I'm Tom Hart, and my co-host is.
Lauren Weinstein coming to you, I guess not really live, from Yaddo in Saratoga Springs, an art residency.
It's a fancy one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the two fanciest ones, not that we're gonna, and again, like these are all, even saying the fanciest ones is bad, it gets you into a bad and toxic place.
All
So,
right, I won't. You don't have to respond to anything.
but
That's
like
fine. But
but if you're gonna do that, Yaddo and McDowell are like the fancy art residencies that are interdisciplinary. Uh, and you can go from anywhere between and 2 weeks and maybe 3 months, maybe. I don't know what the longest somebody could stay here is. And you're treated, they make you food. I have one responsibility each day, which is I have to show up for dinner at 6:30. That's my only thing that I have to do. And this place has been, Yaddo was founded by a painter woman and her very rich husband. And they started having guests here that were all artists. And I think they lived here in like late 1800s. Or this is a very old, there's a big mansion, and you're escorted around a big mansion with stained glass, and everything is carved. And like Patricia Highsmith wrote Strangers on a Train here. And um, Jacob Lawrence made a bunch of his paintings here.
mm,
And so it's intimidating, right? Like it's intimidating to be here. Like almost immediately I felt like some kind of imposter syndrome of even being here, like but then um because but then like there's also like there are choreographers here, and there are filmmakers, and there are people doing all sorts of things. And so um but then it's not really about them, right? It's about just like having the time to create your own work. And um and that's really the only thing that I'm here for. And so then when you don't have any of those normal things that you have to do, like walk the dog and take care of your kids and think about what's for dinner, and make sure like all the logistical things, like what happens to your brain. So there are a lot of big questions here. And like some people like to go and party every night there. If I wanted to, there's like a pool house here, places where people can play ping pong. And and there's also like this weird kind of horniness that you get here because it's like high school, and you're like, oh my god, I'm in love with this person. And then you're like, wait, this is insanely misdirected, like sexual energy that I need to just like put into my work. Like and I think everybody feels it to a certain extent, and just realizing that makes you feel. And then other people, just people are coming out of whatever situation they came in here with, they're bringing all this stuff. And so it's just, it's a really interesting place.
did you buy those $110 pants after you felt all that sexual energy or before?
uh Maybe I brought him like the second day or third day I was here.
Okay, you don't have to really answer that weird question. Just wanted to know if that was like a way to sort of like channel that energy. Is like, I'm gonna buy some really cool, interesting pants,
I
or
think
if
it probably was like, yeah, I think it was. I like, yeah, I don't know. It's funny because just the more you realize that everybody's going through the same kind of feelings here, the better it is. Or maybe they're all going through different, I don't know. There were two things actually that one of the residents here led an improv class, and I've always been so afraid of doing improv. Has anybody here ever done improv before? Oh, you okay? Yeah.
I love
So
it.
you guys are like ahead. But I've always been so afraid of it because I was afraid, I think, of saying something inadvertently that would really hurt somebody's feelings or embarrass or just going
Mhm.
too far in some way. But the woman that led it, it was so gentle. And I really felt like it opened me up and helped me kind of like, and it was a really good way to direct all that kind of crazy energy,
Uh,
you
uh,
know, like just have people saying funny stuff. And one of the exercises was like, you're the authority about something, but you're just given the thing that you're the authority of. I just thought that was a really fun. So I was like the head of the janitorial team on Air Force One.
nice.
And I mean, that was just a layup for me, saying like, yes, and the president has lots of accidents.
Yeah, that,
So but you know, like the idea of not going for the joke too and not blocking somebody else, like these are all like really, really good ideas
I
to.
didn't
Isn't it called Yes and?
Yes, exactly, the yes and that's right.
I didn't realize we were going to talk about improv today. I think we should save improv talk for another
Yeah.
session because I'm very interested in that. And I think just real quick, taking improv classes didn't change my life, but it definitely like focused a lot of what I had wanted to do with my life. It was like, oh, this was like the missing ingredient, but I don't think we need to go there. I want to hear about the antics at no,
And
actually,
there haven't really been any antics. I think it was just like putting, I mean, I think for other people they're totally antics, but
oh, right, okay.
it's like putting my head in this workspace and feeling like you're not. Oh, the other thing, a lot of people are like presenting their work, but you don't have to feel like you should. But for
Mhm.
myself, because I've been working on the story for so long, like I took like 30 pages here that I wanted to try in watercolor and then maybe see if I could get the last part of my book really, really nailed down after all that information that I got from Ireland. And so I've really focused on watercoloring these 30 pages. It's such an incredible amount of work. Like, but I feel like I'm on a roll and I don't want to break that focus. Like it's really, you get into like I'm in a very different level of focus, maybe the
Mhm.
most focus I've ever been in my life.
Wow. And serious question. We're not breaking that focus by having a podcast call in the middle of it. It's all right.
No, I mean, it's like an hour out of my life, so it's
Okay.
okay.
I just want to continue a little bit because this watching you finish this book has been super interesting and you've gone through a bunch of different phases in just like the past like 9 or 10 weeks we've been talking.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
like, yeah, and you took that trip to Ireland where a lot of things came into focus and now you're in this space of focus where you've said you've never been in before. And do you, the easy question is like, do you think you're gonna like, finish it soon and stuff like that? But this seems like there's a question to ask that I don't know what it is, but it's like, what's happening in your artist's body or something? What's happening to you right now?
Right,
You
right.
kind of answered that, but tell us more.
Um, hmm, I I'm just really hell bent on finishing this chapter.
Hmm.
Um, and and I okay, so here's an example of something. The end of this chapter goes with my character, Gloria Bloomstein, who is coming down off of an acid trip, going and lifting a book of Van Gogh off the shelf and um and looking at the pages,
Mm.
having that whole being having this vibrational energy literally come off a page and into her hand. And so at about 11 o'clock last night, I was like, should I try the copying of the Van Gogh picture? Because I might fuck it up. I don't want to do this because I might screw it up. And then I was just like, but just go for it. and I did it, and I could just do it.
Mhm.
And because I have every support here, like in terms of I can sleep late, like I like it's all very so um so that's I think where I am at right now. I feel like I can do things in a way that I don't feel as much fear.
Mm,
I think that's it. I don't feel as much fear about
mm.
process. Like I know exactly what I'm going to do I'm going to do the last page of the story as soon as I get off this podcast. Um, so that's a huge deal.
Wow.
And I think there are a lot of like loose ends I have to tie up with this story, but I'm not as worried about going there. I think I'm very like present right now in
Mm,
terms of my work.
awesome. And
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that you're also in a great state to answer questions.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
Janice, sorry to keep, yeah, Janice, I asked some people the question that you asked, and I got
let's have,
really, really interesting answers. So yeah, let's move in.
yeah, let's have Janice come on
Okay.
and answer.
Well, I wait. I thought we were going to do some talk about imposter syndrome first.
Oh yeah.
So Tom, you said yesterday you wanted people who wanted to talk. I mean, I have my question too, but can we
I,
talk a little bit
I
about,
just,
I think that really resonated with a lot of people according to the comments.
Yeah, yeah. Do other people have questions about imposter syndrome or like want
I
to
think,
conversation or
I think there's only one question, and it's like, how do I not feel it? I think
okay, yeah.
everybody feels it.
So I asked a resident here she's a really big deal. And
What?
Mhm.
uh but she's like she's an environmental designer. She does land sculpture. And I asked her about imposter syndrome, and she didn't even miss a beat. She went back and she was like, listen, that's that's the outer world keeping you down. Like to imposter syndrome is is just a concept that the world of tastemakers have invented so that you feel like you can't do what you're doing. Like just get out of it, just stop that. Like she just went back and said that, and I was like, hey, yeah.
Was it that easy? Did you just go back and then be like,
No, well, it's like this voice. How many people have that like voice that keeps creeping in their head that's like, is this right? Is this wrong? Like, I think that never
what do you
ends.
mean? What do you mean, right or wrong? Like an action or
Like while you're working, I feel like that imposter syndrome. I guess there's two levels of it, right? Like there's the like I'm at Yaddo right now. Like, should I even be here? Like, why am I here? Like, and so that's the big one. Like, am I worthy? Like that kind of thing. And then the other one is that voice that comes into your head while you're working, and it's like, is this what you're even doing? Is this worthwhile? Like what? Um, but I think, yeah, what cuts off that those horrible voices in your head? I think at every single level in your artistic world, you have that feeling of imposter syndrome. I don't know how do other people get
Do you
over
think
it?
there are people who are so ego driven that they don't have imposter
yeah,
syndrome?
yes.
Anyone come across those people?
Yeah, there are some. Except late at night, like 4 in the morning when they wake up with the sweats.
Like for me, I think I was enrolled in the year-long program, and that really helped me. I mean, I had a professional background as an illustrator, and I had big clients, like big magazines, but that was like a lifetime ago. And to come back, and then I had all this, I expressed it last year, all this, like, am I really an artist? Like all this baggage and garbage that went back to art school. And so those voices have been planted in our head by other people.
Hmm.
I think for me, it was like you can't be an artist if you do graphic design. Like illustration wasn't, I just sort of fell into that or moved. But I always had like, who knows, it would take a lot of analysis and therapy. And I think I just have to like compartmentalize and put it in a box. And but I guess a big question for me is do people want to hear my story? Am I the person to tell this story and are people interested in it?
That's a
Yeah,
different.
yeah. And then the only way that you'll know is if you actually tell it.
Well, that's what I'm doing. And so that was back to my question about what was my question? How, like for me, um, I'm telling a story about supporting my daughter through chronic illness. And ever since it started after she had an acute illness and hospitalization, and I was learning to tell stories through comics at that time. And I thought, well, I'll start telling this story. But since then, there's been countless episodes. Like I'm always in the cycle of the story I'm telling, even though that story has a beginning, middle, and kind of resolution. But the one of the biggest challenges for me has been to keep going through the grief I am enduring. So I'm learning to be more compassionate and kind to myself. Like right now, even though my daughter's a grown up, like in her mid 20s, she's still, everyone needs an advocate, and I'm still her mother, and she's still going to come to me when she's feeling overwhelmed and unwell. And she's medically, it's a very difficult time right now, and I'm having to, help with navigating and advocating. And so I think I'm giving myself a break. I'm at the stage now where I have a pitch into a couple of publishers, and I think two is enough for now, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. And I do want to create more work, but maybe I need a break.
Yeah. So the maybe I need a break is I asked some people at Yaddo the other day, like when basically your question, which was like when is it okay? How do you come to terms with the idea that you might have to take a break on a very, very hard personal project? And a man that I had met for the first time maybe 2 days ago, he's like, well, I think I'm losing a project right now. And he started to talk about it, and he almost burst into tears. Like, this is you've hit upon an incredibly hard thing. And three other people just turned around and they're like, the project will tell you when you need to stop.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
I'm taking a break, but I also want to, like, I have a 120-page draft, but I know some additional chapters I want to do. And one of them, I guess I kind of got the idea from Cara Gormley, although it was cut, her epilogue about the process of making it. But for me, I think it's important to have a chapter about how I've been living in this like Groundhog Day. I think that's become sort of like a cultural term. We all know what that means.
Mhm.
Like episodic repetition. It's literally like I can find texts that are verbatim from what I've written in the memoir, which speaks to the truth of what I've written, but it keeps happening over and over again while I'm trying to create this. And previously, I would take long breaks, but I would be so angry at myself and full of shame and why aren't I working on it? And it's taken me years of that pattern to get to the point where I'm like, okay, like this is really hard to do at the same time that I'm living through it.
Yeah, I feel like the act of telling a certain kind of story, and a lot of us have ideas about stories that we want to kind of replicate. This is what a story is, so I want to do one of those. The act of telling a certain kind of story is different than the act of living life in the present and sort of having art be part of that practice or part of that experience. And I think those are pretty two different things. and so and so you need to like, and it's probably hard to do both at once. You know,
Yeah.
I can imagine that like, somebody going through anything difficult at the moment, maybe art is their way to sort of get through it, and they just fill up a page of doodles or scribbles,
Mhm.
or they just do some weird, some stuff that sort of lets them express that emotion somehow, but it's not like structured and it's not telling the story. Some people might be that way, some diarists and things like that, but other people just might need to like, I just need my 20 minutes of like scribbling on the page, right? And then, but that's not quote making my graphic novel or whatever, right? So like there's that too, which I find quote making my graphic novel extremely difficult these days. I only find the therapeutic stuff easy, which is interesting because we're talking to Lauren, who's been working on this book for so long. I'll hand it over to you, Lauren, because I know there's more to say.
Well, except I feel like you have more practice doing this. Like you wrote a book about like the most painful thing, and then you did, but you had some perspective too. Like it was over.
A little.
Yeah,
I kind of did it in the heat of the moment, but not.
right.
But I did it soon after. I think in the end, I was a little surprised by how soon I did it, but I had to. That was maybe actually a case of me doing both things at once. But it was only because I had so much practice with storytelling, so much practice. Like I don't think people realize it, but I was really in practice, mostly because I was like this unseen underground artist with a couple of years of not really having much out there in the public. But so like when I needed to process, first of all, the worst of it, I processed in words and I just wrote in my diary a lot. But that was really like 5 weeks of that or so. And then, and then there was like a breath. And I was like, oh, okay, I want to sort of form this into comics because I love comics. It's actually the way I have stayed sane and dealt with the world of intense emotions. And so like after that, just 5 weeks of just gargantuan blackness, um, then I crafting something on the page was the way sort of to stay sane. So my example, I don't think I think it's kind of different. I mean, it's kind of rare. More often than not, people have a lot of time and then tell it later. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it the amount of perspective people need is it's all different. Do you need, and how different is the story than the process of your own grieving process or your own um however you're getting through the situation. Those really are two different things in a certain, they don't have to be, but I think
Yeah.
they, like nearing the end of this story right now, I'm really thinking about like the characters and what this particular chapter needs rather than anything necessarily about my life, especially because it's so long ago. Uh, but then through that process, I think it actually, whatever decisions I make about the finishing lines of the story actually kind of influences my life in some way.
Sure.
Like the biggest thing I'm thinking about with the story I'm writing right now is how safe is this guy that I meet while tripping acid? How safe should I make him?
Hmm.
How and and so that's a really, those are narrative questions, but then like how does it work itself out in the book, and then how did it work itself out in real life? Like these are all, I don't know,
Can you, Lauren, can you talk about some of the things that you did do a little closer to the bone, like even like mothering and during COVID, for instance, or one of your birth stories, or things that were maybe not 20 years in the past,
right,
a little
right.
closer, or were there experiences where uh, where you were kind of like processing and creating narrative at the same time in any of those examples?
100%
Yeah.
actually. What my daughter got really, really sick at the beginning of COVID. She had to be hospitalized, and um, I I started just doing watercolors. I did watercolors of her in the hospital. I did, and then it turned out, like then it ran in the New Yorker, and that was too much, too fast, and she was too young,
Hmm.
I think, to really. She wanted, like me to tell her story, but she was also like 13, 12. She was really too young. And I think that wasn't, nothing really bad happened, but it wasn't really this. I wish that I'd kind of held off a little bit, but
But
yeah,
but that was about the publication and not about the
yeah,
process.
yeah, that was about the publication. Like I
Well,
just feel like maybe it wasn't,
but
yeah.
telling that story in real time, how did you manage that? And did you have ideas that like, oh, this I should tell this a certain way, or I'll tell this later, a few years from now in a certain way, or did you just sort of tell it in real time?
I think I needed to know that she was physically going to be better, so I couldn't do it like right in the thick of
Hmm.
um of while she was very sick. Like I needed to know that she was going to get better. And so I waited until that. But we were still in the pandemic, and we're, like, so I used it as a process to get through what we were all going through in the pandemic.
Hmm.
Mm,
Hmm.
But
Have I ever,
yeah.
I, it seems like every couple of podcasts I bring up Blossoms and Bones by Kim Hands. Have you ever read that, Lauren?
No.
Um, I think it's brilliant. I think it's one of my favorite graphic novels, if not my favorite at the moment. And Kim is an extremely talented artist with a lot of wisdom. You know, she studied Jungian archetypes and she might have gone to Cooper Union. I mean, she's really trained, but she was also completely broken when she started this book for a number of reasons. And she was like really sought after. And she actually like she was supposed to be like teaching this fancy workshop in LA, and she called up and said, I'm not doing it. And she went to some like ashram in Pennsylvania or something and started binge eating candy. And then that's when she was like, I'm fucked up. And and then so and she said, I've got no fucking answers. And and so she just opened up her sketchbook and she said, I've got a month here. I'm just gonna draw. I'm just gonna tell the story or whatever. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I've got an empty sketchbook and I've got a month, and nothing else that I'm doing is working. So she said, and so it starts off like page one, maybe two, starts off with her trying to come up with a title for it. And then there's this voice that's kind of a voice of clarity saying, no, no, you're faking it. Nope. And then so she's like, you can hear the two voices, this one voice that wants her to be well, but the other voice that presents well, right? Like the fancy one that should have been teaching the workshop. Um, and then eventually the voice of clarity just says, just draw the feeling. And it keeps coming back to that, just draw the feeling. And over the course of this month, she starts to open up, tell the story, and then these characters emerge. And the story is a lot of grief about a broken relationship, but also two miscarriages, I think an abortion, also, but all the eating disorder and all of the stuff that she just had to contend with. And and it winds up being these two skeletons going on this like weird mission on this mountain of bones. And then there's also this weird marquee, and all these things just emerge out of her just desperation to not um her desperation to just figure it out on the page for her own sake. Anyway,
Mhm.
It's my favorite book because it is so incredibly raw, but also so beautifully. Oh, and it's the ending is just really, really gorgeous, and I really think it's marvelous. And
I've
also,
never even heard of this book. I don't
no one has. You know why? It came out like March 20th, 2020, and like
know.
everybody's like, a book? What? Anyway, um, and there's certain points where she turns the book sideways and writes a little prayer that she sort of needs to both she both needs to hear, but she also needs to spend like a few hours writing it out onto the paper and drawing it herself, and she really needs to get it integrated into her body. And so every once in a while you're reading it and you flip it and then you read the prayer and then you keep reading. It's a great book. It really is my favorite. Um, and the point being is that it's very different than a book where something happened to you a while back and you want to tell that story, right? I think both are really valid. Um, Sometimes embracing a little more of that, like, I don't know what story I'm telling, but I'm going to be here present on the page right now, and maybe it'll be part of the story. I think that can sometimes work. It's not for everybody though, because it's pretty tough, actually. I think to like it's easy to just sort of sit back on your sketchbook while watching TV and noodle around. I think we all do that, um, but we shouldn't put it in our graphic memoir. But there are times where like you can be like, I don't know what's going to be on this page, but I'm going to draw it, and maybe, and if you're really in it, that whatever suffering you're going through or whatever, maybe it does wind up as part of the process. Anyway, I'm not even sure we're still really talking about Janice's situation or not, but I wanted to just talk about the other version of the, like, I have an idea and here's the idea. Like, this is the other version where you just all you have is desperation and a blank bunch of pages.
But Janice, it seems like you wrote 120 pages, you submitted it to a couple publishers. You're actually at a perfect stopping point. Like, it would make complete sense to just let this part kind of play itself out and maybe think of, you couldn't think of a better time to take a break,
Yeah.
Do you feel that way, or?
Well, it's been a while since I've written anything new. Like worked on doing like final artwork, this 20-page chapter, which I spent a ton of time on. And then I've been sort of learning to write about it. I've applied for things. I got Ontario Art Council grant. So that's sort of what I've been doing lately. And I think learning to write about it really has helped focus on what the themes and like, why am I doing this? And not what is this story about? I know what the story is about, but what am I hoping to convey and who am I hoping to speak to? Um, so that's been good, taking that break, because now I can talk about my project with confidence that this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. And it's also I I think I've heard other people speak about this, but I now see myself and my daughter, and I've expressed this to her because she's very supportive, but she hasn't read the whole thing. She's not a co-author and she doesn't want to read the whole thing at this point. And but I said to her recently, this isn't you and this isn't me. These are characters representing sort of universal truths, or that might be sound really fancy or like bigger than what it is, but characters who are representing feelings that people can relate to and responses. So that's helped me also to be farther away from it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it sounds like you just gave yourself the perspective
Mhm.
to have the bigger picture too. The fact that you could write it, you did all this work and then you could write about it. It focuses your intent. So now you're not really asking the question, why am I doing this? Because
Mhm.
you sort of you've made that structure.
Yeah, and I've had the validation,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
like incredibly validating to get that grant. It's not like that helps with the imposter syndrome. Okay. I
Yeah.
am an artist. The powers that be, have decided that this is a worthy project that we're
Right.
sharing with the world. So it's really changed my confidence about it. But another question I had was, I don't know if it's a question, but I'll just put this out there. Like, people often say to me, it must be so cathartic for you to do that, or therapeutic. And it's all along I've been saying it's more like masochistic. Like, why am I putting myself through reliving these stories or depicting it? But now I do have that distance, and I can say these are characters, and I could, if I wanted to now, I could say, okay, I'm gonna do the final artwork for more chapters, but I'm hoping that maybe somebody will want to publish it and there'll be some editorial work. I think you discussed this in the last podcast, so I don't want to commit too much to final artwork, but yeah, I found like there were so many times in the process I just wanted to quit, like daily. Whenever I'd sit down to work on it, I wanted to quit. But I kept on going. I don't know exactly why. That's hard to articulate, except to feel like the way I think and my perspective is worth sharing and people could relate to it. Any thoughts about that idea of like catharsis or therapy? I didn't do it for that reason.
Yeah, I feel like I've gone through many thoughts about this catharsis. Now I actually do feel like it's incredibly cathartic, um, to, in fact, I sort of hope for that feeling of resolution when I'm working, but I haven't always felt that way. And um, I think maybe the catharsis comes at different points too. It's maybe not while you're working on it, it's after, you know, and maybe even after something gets published, when somebody comes back and has a similar experience to you. You know, that's a really cool, part of giving the thing away to somebody else.
For,
Um,
for me, the question I was going to ask, and I don't know if this is the right question to ask Janice, maybe not, maybe it's just a general question, is like, do you feel like you're making the book out of obligation
mhm.
or something closer to catharsis? Because obligation can be a not very good motivator, you know? And um, here's what's a good motivator: revenge. Uh,
Spite? Spite.
right? Yeah. And so there are probably a couple other, but
Okay.
revenge is a good motivator. So like, and there's obviously something cathartic about like making that revenge manifest itself on the page. Or maybe it's not revenge, maybe it's some other really charged
Well,
emotion. But my point being is sometimes obligation is just like, oh, why am I making this? But if it's like revenge,
okay, mine is not obligation at all.
good.
I don't, um, it's to tell a story that I think other people will relate to. I mean, there's more and more out in the media about people are sharing more and more about their stories of chronic illness, of being
Mhm.
not listened to, of not that my book's about that, but okay, there was a little bit of revenge in the medical gaslighting story. I'm not going to lie. And,
So
but
would you
but
say
it's not
there's an element?
obligation. Pardon me?
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to ask if you an element of generosity then, right? Like I want to offer this to the world so that there's more of these stories visible, or maybe it's even a gift for your daughter or people like your daughter who are no longer who won't be invisible anymore. Yeah.
I think, yeah, both of those things. It's certainly not like in terms of being, what's the word? Like paid back for doing. I mean, no, even if it gets published, I'm operating at a loss. And so I'm not doing it for that. But yeah, I think the idea of offering it as a gift for people like my daughter
Mhm.
who've gone, and I've even heard that from people here on the Mighty Network that it's helped, for instance, the medical gaslighting story has helped them to feel less alone and to get through difficult experiences, similar experiences of not being believed. So obviously that's the best feedback you can get, that I'm making a difference in helping someone else get through. And I'm also hoping, like, through my sort of more comic take on things, that that it's not so much, quote, trauma porn. Like, I'm telling difficult stories, but there's also funny parts to it, because that's life. Like, in my 20-page chapter that I submitted, I wrote a part where my daughter's in the hospital and there's all this back and forth, whether she's mad at me because I'm not giving her the proper response, or we're talking about making jokes about, resiliency, and she would be in the resiliency Olympics, because that's discussions we've had. Maybe wasn't at that time, but I'm trying to bring a sort of lightheartedness to it. Like, this is life. You can be in the worst moments, but also have moments, I wouldn't call it joy, but where you can find the lightheartedness in it. Not silver lining. I hate silver lining. I even hate the idea. I hate resiliency. Like, those are things I'm trying to say, those concepts aren't helpful for people who are sick all the time. Those are actually hurtful concepts.
Lauren, what was your motivation in making like Mothering in COVID or any of the other stories that were a little closer in time and wrought?
Um, well, I was just thinking when Janice, what you were talking about, how I think, especially when I became a mother, a lot of those stories, like I wanted to tell like my birth story, just because I felt like people didn't hear those stories, and I was witnessing a truth that hadn't been told to me before. It wasn't readily available. And I think, Janice, what you're talking about, like in the gaslighting in the medical world, or the lighter side of terrible illness, like all these things, the real motivator for me was like, I don't know, some sort of truth telling. Like I felt like I wanted to tell stories that I hadn't seen. um
That's a great phrase, witnessing a truth. That's an amazing motivator, I would imagine.
yeah, and even now I feel that with this work too. It's like, what I keep coming back in this story about, like, what are the things that people really need to become artists?
Hmm.
And I feel like that's still being defined for me today. And that's um and and it's so interesting, because it sounds like you had to, Janice, you had to sort of confront yourself to say, are my motivations worthy, or like, is this story worthwhile? And was it really only when you got this outer
Yes. It's funny because my in-laws always did, well, they're still alive, but they did Adlerian psychology. And they used to ask me, like, when I did illustration work, why did you care if people liked your work? I'm like, well, because I need to get my next job. But I still need, why do you care about externals? Yeah, having that external validation was really important to me, because that meant that all this work I've put into it is speaking to people.
yeah,
And, but also, in some of the writing in grant applications and residency applications I've done, I wrote, and this is a truth that almost makes me want to cry every time I say it, that working on this has been the greatest learning journey of my life. I can't believe how much I have learned. I've taken my time, and I tell people I've taken my time, because even to pitch, I was talking about it 2 years ago, I had to feel that I was ready to be the person to tell this story in a not authoritative way, but like I had command of the story and command of my abilities to tell the story.
yeah,
So I feel that way now, after all the courses and time I've taken and breaks and distance and maturity of my daughter. I mean, there's so many um, factors to get me to this point that I feel like, yeah, I can tell this story. I'm the person to do it. I have the storytelling skills to do it, and it's going to make a difference for people. So yeah, I think that sounds pretty confident.
And
So,
and the thing you said that it's the greatest learning experience of your life. And that
yeah.
means that you will be transformed at the end of this, you know, you'll be a
I
different
already am
person.
transformed. Like,
Okay. Yeah, expect more though, because otherwise you won't be motivated to finish it. You'll be
oh
like,
no,
I'm already
I
transformed. I
need
don't
a
need any more.
deadline.
Yeah.
I know that about myself. I'm old enough now without a gun to my head. I ain't finishing it. So
Right.
like I really need that. I need those external motivations.
And those different guns to your heads that also are the ones that are, they're motivating, but they're also often, the powers that be. They're the ones that are giving you the signs that what you're doing is communicating as
Yeah.
well. So,
And
Mm-hmm.
there's no way one of the part of the learning journey or whatever is that I can't do this by myself. So
Mm-hmm.
like I grew up in a time collaboration wasn't really encouraged like in my whole educational career. It was very much like individuate, your individual abilities. And not that I'm collaborating so much, but I've learned so much from everybody. And every time I go on one of these calls, there's something that speaks to me, some wisdom that someone's sharing. So, and that really helps uplift me to keep on going and not quit. So I'm not at the point where I want to quit anymore, but I was for a very long time. But now I'm at the point where like I can't create any more content while I'm in the middle of this really stressful situation.
Mm.
yeah.
And I
What?
think even Tom last year, when the year-long course, like it started, and then my daughter was hospitalized with a really serious infection at the beginning, and that's how it ended. It was like these strange bookends while I dedicated all my work to like advancing my abilities and storytelling about this particular memoir. So it was very strange. And that's kind of like the story of that back and forth of what I'm doing.
Mm. So what's good for you when you are in the middle of it and stressed out, right? I mean, do you go play tennis or something like that, or
Yeah,
do you have a
sports.
thing? Sport?
That's about it. Bike rides, manic
Cool.
bike rides.
Manic bike
I'm
rides.
learning to accept that my body is not as young as it once was. So, yeah, just I don't know, binge watching TV, just something that for me, and I talk about that in the memoir, how like physical activity really helps me.
Mhm.
But I'm not a person who keeps a sketchbook. I keep saying I gotta keep a sketchbook. But I've never been, I'm a very task oriented. It's very hard for me just to like I'm deadline task oriented. When I was an illustrator, I'd be working on tight deadlines for magazines. It's like, okay, I've got like a day to come up with this concept, and it was grueling and horrible. But that's kind of how I work. So I wish I was a sketchbook keeper, and that's what I thought like a real artist was.
Right, right.
So that's not who I am. I like to draw things.
So, well, do we think we've helped with the questions you had, Janice?
Just, I think it's helped
Uh-huh,
me to talk about it. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Like a kindness, listening to everybody and listening to what you said is again like a kindness to myself to say, yeah, it's reaffirming that it's okay. I don't have to work on this right now. I'm in a good place and I can sort of let sleeping dogs lie, as they say, and
And you don't have to
have
be,
to do those chapters that I'm planning to do right now. That can be in the future.
yeah, I was going to say you also don't have to be your own sole source of energy too, right? Reaching out to being in a community really matters. It can really help you. Having a little bit of external appreciation matters too. You know, all these things
Yeah.
can help fuel
So
you.
right now I have like the Toronto Comic Arts Festival is coming up. So I'm going to produce like material, spend the next 2 weeks getting ready for that and having handouts that I can, exchange with people. And So that's a goal. So it'll keep me on my sort of focused on building my identity as a comic artist, I guess, and promoting what I'm doing, but not necessarily creating new material. And maybe that's fine.
No, that's totally fine. I think everybody,
Yeah, like I don't have to be,
yeah.
I have this project, I've defined what it is. I feel like I've done a lot of work. I understand what I'm doing, and I'm going to focus on other aspects of it, my
Mhm.
work, like more administrative stuff. So yeah, this has been very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because that thing that guy told me, the project, or all these people saying, the project tells you when it needs to stop. Like, it seems like you completely embody that. Like, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
like you're so project oriented, and you don't need to keep a sketchbook. There's no law. You don't need to like make a mini comic for TCAF just because it exists. Like,
Yeah.
I think that what your inner voices and external voices are telling you is, you're listening to them. And it's true, it is like that there's always, you could do more, but if it just feels like if it's not helpful, and you're spinning your gears, like, what's the point? No point at all. And
Yeah.
sounds like, your experience as an illustrator, you're very used to working on deadlines, and like, what's what's the point of working any other way unless you feel like,
That's what I'm used to.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, unless I'm doing, the only time when I haven't felt like that is when I've done like paintings, when I'm
Mhm.
like, I can work on it and I'll know when it's finished because it looks like my illustration. So,
Right. Right.
so yeah, like I've never been what I guess the imposter syndrome is I have this idea of what an artist is, and that's not me because I have these fantasies of what an artist is.
Sure. Yeah, we all do.
Yeah,
So,
And
but
it's changing too. It's like it's interesting that you mentioned real artists don't do graphic design. Like that's definitely in the past. And then it used to be real artists don't do, illustration. And now it's like, I mean, I think everyone like 30 and younger identifies with being a real artist, and they're like, real artists sell out. Of course they do. It's like real. I mean, I don't know. There's just a lot of ways like in which our ingrained idea of what quote an artist is sort of changes over time, and we're all sort of guilty or not guilty. We're all captive of the time period we grew up in and the circumstances we grew up in and what the myth of the artist was at that time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just working on my list today. It's in this book of what an artist is or isn't.
What? Yeah, give us a couple on.
let's hear it.
We'll sign out on the way.
All right, what do you need to be an artist? Do you need to suffer? Do you need to be happy? Do you need time? Do you need drugs? Do you need to be a man? Do you need money? Do you need faith? Do you need friends? Do you need mentors? Do you need to let go of fear? Do you need to let go of judgment?
Those are questions. What are the answers?
I don't know.
Oh,
I hope not. Do you need to be a man?
yeah, for sure. How much time do you have there in your residency, Lauren? Will you have answers by the end?
No.
Uh,
I have answers by the end. I have to go on Monday. So
oh, okay.
Drag.
Well, let's let you turn your chair around and get some work done.
cool.
I'm so happy and honored that you were able to visit us from here and have your pages behind you, and it's just awesome. It's been awesome to check in with you as you finish this book, as you work on this book.
Thanks. Yeah, I do. I highly recommend that people apply for things like this. It really, even just being around all these people, different from different walks of life, it really, like, every single conversation I have at dinner with people is always like opening up my mind to different possibilities, and so interesting to see to get out of the cartoonist space and into the rest of the world. It's pretty cool.
All right. I forget, is it Michael Ashner we have next week? I think so. I forget actually, but Michael, if that's the case, then we'll see you next week. If it's not, I'll look at the schedule. Lauren, thank you. So next week we will have you back in New Jersey.
Yep, I'm back in New
All,
Jersey.
all
Although
right.
I'm crying and no.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what did I do? I just burned all that work. It was terrible. No.
No, it'd be really interesting to have you check in to see where your head is at, because you've been traveling and really devoted to this project in this way that has offered you a lot of clarity, but then you'll be back. Right? Because we saw you at the spa, then we saw you in Ireland, and then we saw you here. So back in the grind in New Jersey, and
Back in the grind.
we'll see what happens. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. If
Yeah, thank
you
you.
joined us from SAW. I'm going to do some editing to this file and then it'll be up soon. And tell your friends. And again, thanks, Janice, for offering those questions. And good luck. Just do what you need to do on that project, and know that we're rooting for you, and take those external validations as deeply as you can. You know, people, those are real. If people say, yes, I liked it. Yes, it moved me. Yes, it made me feel less alone, but also, yes, here's a grant. Like,
Yeah.
sit with that shit. That's really good.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody. See you next time.
You and Lauren. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. This has been a production of the Sequential Artist Workshop, or SAW. You can find us on social media at Comics Workshop and online at sawcomics.org. There you can also hear about our many courses and intensives and in-person programs. SAW is a nonprofit supported by people like you. Learn how to make a tax-deductible donation at the donate page of sawcomics.org. You can join our free community of comics explorers at members.sawcomics.org. Thanks so much for being here.